Okay, so this definitely was a culture shock for me when I first moved to Spain. And this thing was eating out or going out to eat. And not particularly because of the food, but more so just the whole dining experience was quite different and quite distinct than what I was used to. Hi, my name is Kirsten. Welcome to Weekly Videos with me, Kirsten. I like to share on my channel what it's like living as an American abroad in Spain. Um, so I remember it was a couple years ago, probably like my second or my third year in Spain, and I remember meeting some friends to go out to eat midday for lunch. And lunch, for people that are unfamiliar with this Spanish timetable, lunch is usually begins around like 2 and can extend all the way until about 4. So besides that adjustment, that was an adjustment. But I remember one of the first times I went out to eat with some of my friends, we went out for a menu del dia, and pretty much what this is probably one of the fun aspects of eating out in Spain is it's kind of like a special, like a lunch special. It usually happens middays in certain cities where you'll get anywhere from 2 to 3 courses. It's like a predetermined menu, and you can choose the dishes that you want, and you get to have 2 to 3 courses for anywhere between like 10 euros to about 15 euros. So essentially, for the price of like maybe one normal dish during this menu del dia, you can get, a good amount of food for a fraction of the cost. So I went out for these little lunch specials with my friend, and I remember we were sitting down and we were talking and kind of waiting for the waitress to approach our table, and we had this woman come up to us, and she started getting closer, and she was holding this little notebook in her hand, and she literally like threw the notebook on the table, and on the notebook was written out the lunch specials for the menu del dia, or menu del dia. um and yeah, it was just kind of like a weird experience to kind of coming from the US, where like customer service, especially in restaurants, is such a big deal. Like, from the moment you walk into most restaurants and to the moment you sit down, you're being greeted. People are asking if you want water, if you need anything. You're like taken care of. So having this like experience where um the waitress kind of just like, oh, okay, you want to eat, well, here's the menu, not even like the actual like menu, it just like the menu of for lunch that was literally handwritten on a notebook. Was kind of funny and kind of surprising at the same time. So customer service here can vary. Sometimes you will get waiters or waitresses that are very chatty and kind of, start a conversation with you, are really cheery or happy. And sometimes you will get waiters that are very direct and kind of just bring you what you want, and that's it. I asked for your order, and I've noticed that too, at least where I live, in Cayenne, where I live, the service that you get kind of depends on how busy the restaurant is, because a lot of times sometimes they'll have packed restaurants with only like one or two waiters, and so usually when that happens, you're going to get someone that is a little rushed, that's not gonna be super attentive, but yeah, that's okay. That's an adjustment. So yeah, and I think that also has to do with waiters and waitresses here get paid a normal salary versus in the US. A lot of the waitresses and the waiters are super friendly to you because they want your tips. Tipping is not something that's super normalized here. It's not something that is expected here or super expected here, at least where I live. So yeah, so the the interactions are different because the salaries are different. More of a shock to me was dinner, because literally kitchens will not open until like 8:30 at the earliest. I've never really seen in the kitchen. There are some restaurants, I think, in more tourist areas that kind of stay open all day or open their kitchen a little bit earlier to accommodate to tourists. But if you're coming to Spain and, especially coming from Western cultures or Western countries that maybe eat lunch or dinner at like 6, 7 o'clock at night, that's not going to happen. Yes, the earliest that you will probably can get a table anywhere that's like not a super touristic restaurant is like 8:30, but 9 is usually like when I prefer to go out and eat. Between 9 and 10, and then restaurants will literally be packed at like 11 with people just starting their meals. So that was a little bit of an adjustment. Another adjustment, and I went out to eat recently with some friends of mine who are Colombian, and they kind of confirmed this little, I guess, unfamiliarity, which is usually when you sit down at like, an authentic Spanish restaurant, they are going to almost immediately when you sit down, they are going to ask for your drink order. Which obviously this is something in the United States happens. Usually they take your drink order first before they take your food order. But I think the difference between that in the States is like in the States, they'll sit you down, you'll have a little bit of a minute. They'll first bring you your menus so you can look at the menus, and then they'll come back and ask you, what do you want to get started with, what you can have to drink. Versus in Spain, literally the moment you sit down, they will ask you what you want to drink. So you kind of have to, like, even without looking at the menu, you kind of have to know what you want to drink. um, and to me, that was a little bit different because I'm used to kind of having that moment of like, okay, do I want a soda? Do I want a beer? Like, let me look at their options. And you can ask them too. You can ask them, like, what do you have to drink? What beers you have? What sodas you have? Um, Speaking of sodas, I'm not a Coca-Cola drinker, but I have heard a lot of people say that Coke Zero is the, probably one of the best sodas here to drink. I have not personally tried it because Coke is not my thing, but insider tip, if you like Coke Zero, or if you don't like Coke Zero, try it here and it might be something that you like. Another thing I think a little bit more of an adjustment when it comes to eating out is this idea of like sharing meals. And I obviously, like, when I went out to eat in the United States, like every now and then, like I might share a plate with a friend or something like that. Especially there are places that I think it was like Buco de Beppo, who would make these family-sized plates for the intention, for the purpose of sharing. But here, I feel like sharing plates is something more common to do. And even when I go out with friends, I sometimes, if I go out with my partner and friends, usually my partner, I will just get something to share just because I have more dietary restrictions. But it is kind of a common practice. Like if you go out with a group, at least in my experience, that everyone kind of like, you order plates, you order dishes to share. So you might like be in a group of like 5 or 6 people, and you might order, 4 or 5 different plates, and everyone will kind of share and eat from the same plate. So if you're coming to Spain, I would, and you're kind of looking at places to eat. I think an insider tip that I have learned when I went on a tour with Devour Tours, a food tour with them, is to look for the restaurants that are kind of busy. It can be a little bit intimidating because some of the restaurants can be a little bit crowded. Usually a crowded bar is a good sign. And if you're kind of like, a little bit intimidated about like having to maybe speak the language, or having so many people around, usually what will happen is like you go into a crowded bar and you wait a little bit and people will move on. So they'll kind of have like the high points where there's a lot of people, and then the people kind of sizzle out, and then it'll be a little calmer, and then like another wave of people come in. But usually it's crowded for a reason, because whatever food they're serving, whatever drinks they're serving is top quality or really good. So Don't shy away from the busy places. And the last thing I want to share, that was kind of also an adjustment, but something that I really appreciate about Spain, is the sobremesa. And pretty much what that is a time is when you finish your meal, and it is this beautiful time when the plates are empty. You might have just ordered, like, your second or your third beer, and people are sitting at the table with their bellies full, and they're just talking, and they're continuing the conversation, they're laughing, and no one's ordering anything. The food is done, everyone has eaten, everyone is happy, and we kind of just sit there and we talk and we hang out. And it's really special and very different from the United States, because usually, there's kind of this unwritten rule, like, once you finish your meal, you have dessert maybe, but you don't linger after, because if you do linger, it's kind of considered rude, because most of the restaurants, their priority is to get people in and out. So, once you finish your meal, you ask for the bill and you leave, so that the restaurant can seat someone else, and the waiter, the restaurant, can make money from the next table, from this continuous flow of people. But here in Spain, it's not very common to do that, and I remember feeling like quite uncomfortable, actually, kind of hanging out after a restaurant, and kind of just talking and kind of like wondering when we were going to leave. But then I also noticed that we were hanging out at this table, and the waiter that was attending to us was like nowhere to be found. Like, they were off doing their own thing. They didn't care. And it was nice. It was nice to kind of have this extra time and not feel like you're rushed, and kind of feel that you can stay in the moment and enjoy the moment, rather than like, all right, now we got to figure out where we're going to go next. So, yeah, so those are some things, some cultural shocks and experiences, cultural adjustments to say, that I have from living in Spain. And yes, um, if you want to hear more about my dining experiences and just my experiences living in Spain, make sure you subscribe. And please let me know in the comments if you are from Spain, or if you live in Spain, or you're visiting Spain. Let me know what your eating out experiences have been like.